Hey everyone, welcome to the Real Life Show, and we're here for another episode. This is a special episode. We have got a two-part episode, first ever, with this month, December and January, with our guests today, Pastor Paul and Gail.
Yay!
Chamberlain!
Woo!
Woo! Welcome, guys. Two-parter.
Do you mean like a football match?
Like a football.
You know, you're going to tell us off halfway through.
Half time.
Now they're going to bring subs on off.
Who's warming up? Who's warming up? So we've got a two-part episode. We're going to chat to you for a little bit.
Good.
Have a bit of a break. Come back next month for them. But 10 minutes later for us. But we're going to have a nice time today. A little chat in our studio today.
Yeah.
In our white room.
Great setup, Josh.
Nice, thank
Great
you.
Setup.
But some people watching will be really, really happy to see you guys on.
Yeah.
They'll be like, yes, Paul and Gail are on. We get to hear your story. Some people will be like, who on earth's this?
Yes.
And it'd be great to know who these people are.
Yeah.
So explain to people watching and listening who you are and how we know you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the great thing is we've come back to our home church, really.
Yeah.
Because we were the founder pastors, the pastors that started Arise, that we could call Calvary. So I always call it Calvary Arise now. So almost 40 years ago, it's the 40th year. We're entering the 40th year. And so we were the founding pastors, and then had the joy back in 2016 of being able to pass the baton on to Pastors Andy and Sarah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've known Sarah's husband, Andy, since the 2 days. He was 2 or 3 days old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I've known him as a baby right the way through. And then his lovely wife-to-be came on the scene, and I first met her at the Copthorne Hotel when we did an
Remember
event.
Copthorne nights?
Yeah, we had
Yes.
those evening
That's where we
events, didn't
first met
we?
Sarah.
Yeah. They
And I
were
was
great, they
thinking,
were.
Yes, come on, Andy. Yes, big goals.
Wow, you had the seal of approval straight away.
From Gail.
Wow.
That's it, isn't
From the
it?
Copthorne.
That's all you
Yes.
need.
Wow.
And Josh, I remember you as a little boy. So if anybody wants any stories about Josh,
Yes,
Oh.
we do.
You probably know stories about me now as well, though.
Yeah.
Mum and Dad,
Too many.
too many
Yes.
stories.
So
You know about me before I know.
I know. So you were a little boy
Yeah.
when you came in. I'm guessing about
About-
3, 4.
I think so. We've been
Oh.
around for about 21 years now. So
Older than
so
us. Yes,
six I was.
Wow.
Quiet.
Yes.
Oh,
Quite a little
you were
bit.
so
You
cute.
were. What happened, Josh?
Oh, well, I just didn't speak for 6 years, so now I'm getting everything out now.
Yes. That is quite.
Yeah,
That
so
explains
here
a
I
lot.
am on a It's Chat Show.
Yeah.
Just getting it
What a
all out.
turnaround.
Just getting it all out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've known you
Brilliant.
for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so wonderful to have you. So thank you for making time
Yeah.
for us
Yeah,
and
no
sharing
worries.
lots of things. It's going to be a great episode.
Yeah.
So we always start here, as you know, because you watch the Real Life Show. When did you guys come to know Jesus?
Shall I go first?
You go first.
So I had the wonderful, and the older I get, the kind of more appreciative I get of the fact that my parents were not just Christians. My parents were pastors of a church. So my dad had planted a church in Birmingham, and so literally right from day one, I was brought into church. Then he moved to a church in Manchester when I was 5, and then came down to the glorious place called Gornal when I was 10, and
Wow.
was a pastor all the way through. So I had a wonderful, the more you think about it, it was very privileged upbringing.
Yeah.
So there was no money around, but what there was a great home, but a great spiritual atmosphere
Wow.
that you could not buy. You just could not fully understand it till now. It's only now I kind of like that. That was so good.
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
So that's my background,
Yeah.
really. So it was very good, very, not, in a way, it's very different to Gail's, isn't it?
Yeah, I came to know Jesus along a very difficult pathway, which we can touch on later. But I was 15 when I had a serious discussion with God on my own.
Great.
It wasn't in church. It wasn't after a preach. It was me getting serious with God on my own, in my own house, no one around. And I can remember saying to God, I want to know the truth, because I have been lied to a lot of times during my childhood and teenage years. And I want to know the truth. And if this is the truth about you coming in the form of a humanity and taking on that cloak and being Jesus and dying for my sin, then I am so sorry for that. But it's only if that's the truth, God.
Wow.
Today is a make or break day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I either do not want to know and I walk away forever,
Yeah.
or you will tell me and I'm in it, and I'm in it for life.
Wow.
So it was what I call my if prayer.
Yeah.
If all this is true, then
Yeah.
I am sorry. And it was with tears flowing down my face that I said that prayer,
Yeah.
not necessarily believing it at the time, but wanting proof.
Yeah.
And honestly, in a moment of time, I now know it was the Holy Spirit, but at that time I didn't know what it was, descended into my heart. And that feeling has never left me. It was as tangible as anything I've ever experienced, of heaven entering my heart and God proving himself to me. This is true, Gail. Are you in it with me?
Wow.
And bang, I was in it. I wasn't allowed to go to church by my parents,
Oh, wow.
other than Friday youth clubs.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to church for about 5 or 6 weeks. First time I entered church then, church as in a church service, and the appeal was given. I was there, but I'd already done it weeks
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But it was a confession of my faith publicly then. So I didn't actually say yes to Jesus. I had a bit of a fisty fight with God.
That's so good. Wow.
That's
So-
so different to mine,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Because being brought up in the family and going to church all the time, you're kind of like, you can almost kind of drift
Yeah.
into Christianity,
Sure.
which, as we know, you don't drift. You actually need to make a choice, don't you?
Yeah.
And mine's quite intriguing, and it's got funny aspects to it. The whole story. In that, when I was 8, we used to have. We didn't have children's facilities when the service was going on, so the kids all went into church, and you had to kind of be part of the church, you know. So I was there every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, and then for Sunday school during the afternoon. I remember Judith talking about this on a most recent life story. And so I did the similar thing. But on a Sunday night, when I think I was 8, I made a decision for the Lord. But I was so intrigued and so captivated by the love of God. Really, I think the Holy Spirit spoke to my heart then, that virtually every week for the next year, I kept putting my hand up.
Yes.
I kept putting my hand up. Yes.
Recommit. Recommit.
Anybody want to become a Christian? Yes.
I definitely did that.
And I can
Definitely.
always remember my father saying to me, Paul, you don't need to do this now anymore.
Oh.
And I'd like, yeah, all right. And so the next week would come, and there'd be an appeal from the front. And put your hands up. Still put my hands
Still
up.
again.
I think, thinking about it, I think seriously, people, and adults do this as well. They get something of the bigness of the gospel,
Yeah.
so they get the sacrifice of Jesus, and
Yeah.
then they get kind of like the Christian life.
Yeah.
And I think some adults do that type of thing,
Yeah.
but me, every week I was convicted of sin.
Yeah.
I was convicted to give my heart to the Lord.
Yeah.
And then I saw a different aspect. And so, although it was a very childish kind of thing, to me, it was tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
So you were a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
People like to say PK. You're
Yeah.
a PK. You know, you like talking to pastors' kids. That you're like a
Yeah.
PK guest.
Yeah.
What was it like being a pastor's kid? Like, was church like every night of the week, a couple of times of the week? Was it full on?
It was ridiculous. That was it. But in those days, they'd have a service on a Monday night, a service on a Wednesday night. You'd have children and youth on a Friday night.
Yeah.
You'd probably have a special on a Saturday night. And you'd have at least 3 services on a
No
Sunday, if
way.
not a fourth one.
Wow.
They called it the after service, just
Ah.
in case you needed an. So I went to about 8 or 9.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's so
but I
mad,
did have
isn't it?
babysitters for the midweek one.
Oh, okay.
So by that time, I was exhausted. But I love the
bet.
kids' clubs, and we always had great kids' clubs, and great youth clubs. And so it was
Your
a
dad, what was the size of the Sunday school that your dad had
well.
in the end?
They used to do a count on the Sunday school, and he would do it, and they would break the record. And this was in the days of pre-vinyl, where they would break the record and literally
vinyl.
break a record
If they broke
on
the
the
record.
number, on the number of
Okay.
kids in.
Yeah.
And I can remember they'd build it, and my dad said, because he ran the Sunday school as well, he did everything basically.
Yeah.
And I can always remember that whoever brought the most in, children off the estates and what have you, was allowed to break the record over his head. And
Over
they
your
did
dad's
break.
head?
Yes.
Yeah, they
The
did break
pastor's
in those
head?
days. They weren't even vinyl. They were like-
Wow.
and I can always remember at Eve Lane, the record that we broke and got up to was 254 kids in one service.
Wow, really?
Children, not adults. Children.
Oh, that's incredible.
254.
Wow.
So somebody came out, broke the record over his head, cut it open.
Is it open?
Yeah.
Oh, my
I
life.
can remember him turning up then at the evening service with a plaster on his head.
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
So
the
it's
things you
crazy.
do for ministry.
So
Oh.
he was a great guy, great pastor.
Yeah.
And you, if you talk in this area about Gerald Chamberlain, you'll have loads of people
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
on. They go on and on and on and on about
Oh,
it
isn't that brilliant?
and make me feel very inferior.
Yeah. So Gail, for you, like you definitely had a pre-Jesus
Oh, yeah.
time then of
Yes.
15 years. Like, what was family life? What did it look like for you?
Well, both of us are only children, so we've got that
Okay.
in common.
Yeah.
I was an only child. My mother used to go to church,
Mm-hmm.
but she didn't have a faith. She went out of tradition, really.
Okay.
My dad did not want to know at all.
Oh wow.
So I used to go to church with my mum in the morning, and then I was sent to church from the age of 5, going on my own to church.
Oh wow.
At 5?
Yeah. It's different generation. So it was the distance of from here to Tesco garage
Yeah.
that I
Oh.
had to walk. It was on an
Wow.
estate, so it wasn't a main road I had to cross. But I enjoyed it initially. But around the age of 8, I had a massive childhood trauma that occurred in church every week after the service, after Sunday school.
Yeah.
The perpetrator was my Sunday school teacher. I was blackmailed into keeping silent because nobody would believe me. They would believe him. He was a Christian. And my parents would hate me and have me put in a children's home. So it's our secret, said the perpetrator, and he kept silent. He would catch me on the way home from work as well, in the street, if I was out playing. Which, different generation.
Yeah.
He played out in the street. If it was a quiet street, not a main road, obviously, but it was a quiet street. And he would walk along my street on his way home from work, lived with his parents. And it carried on for 6 months or more. The only reason it stopped was that he moved house. I moved house, moved area, so didn't go to church anymore. So I thought, that's over. As an 8-year-old, I'll put it in the cupboard, metaphorically.
Yeah.
Lock it, throw the key away. But things like that don't work. Well, I did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly want to go to church anymore,
No.
but I couldn't tell my parents why, so I had to keep going, which brought memories back every time I walked through the door. We then moved house to Russell's Hall, excuse me, in Dudley. And so I said, I was bed 12, and I said, I'm not going to church anymore. You know, I've done that, tick the box, don't need to go anymore. And they agreed, okay, that's fine. But move on 12 months, and this skeleton in the cupboard kept rattling. And I became angry with God. I never stopped believing in him. I always believed he was there and the power was there.
Yeah.
But I started to get angry with God. And I decided I wanted to oppose him as much as I could. So I started off reading horoscopes. That's where it all began.
What age are you here, Gail?
13.
Okay. Yeah.
Started reading horoscopes. And even to this day, tracking on a bit, I won't look at a magazine or a newspaper if there are horoscopes on that page, because I know it would still draw me in.
Wow.
It's like an
Yeah.
addiction.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is an addiction. So I won't allow myself.
Yeah.
If I see it on the page, I'll turn the page. Or
Yeah.
anything comes up, I'll move away from it. But that's where it started. But it grew. So I started to learn how to read palms, tarot cards. I was involved in levitation. And I'm talking big guys that I would levitate, because I would ask for the power to levitate it, and it wasn't God that I was asking, and I knew it wasn't God I was asking the power from. I became involved and led seances with Ouija boards. I can remember the one seance I led, and I was about 14 at this time, 14 coming 15. I can remember the house that I was in with a friend. Parents had gone out to the pub or whatever. We were in the house. She got a dog, and the dog was going crazy to go outside. We let the dog out in the back garden, and it left a 6-foot fence to get out and away.
Wow.
Everyone thought they were pushing the glass round, as you do. And I said, no. Take your fingers off the glass, and I'll prove to you that there's something here. And the glass went round on its own.
Oh.
Gung-ho Gail decided she wanted whatever spirit there was in that room to show themselves, to appear. And this form started to appear in the corner of the room, at which point everyone else in the room screamed out. I didn't, but the glass whizzed round the table on its own, shot off the table and shattered in midair in front of me. From there, from the age of 15, I got involved with a group of people at my school who were Satanists, and got very involved with them. And I was on my way to be initiated as a witch at the summer solstice in Kimber, 1969. My parents knew nothing about this, because I'd been an expert, hadn't I, keeping secrets from them, so it was quite easy. En route, we had a puncture. The car that I was in, changed the wheel. Another mile down the road, another puncture. I never got to that initiation ceremony in the summer, in June of 69. 3 weeks later, in July, I had a teenage trauma, and the perpetrator was an ex-boyfriend who decided he wanted something from me that I didn't want to give him. And he took it from me. Even though I was screaming, no, no, he still took it from me. And I couldn't go home because my father would have known what was wrong. My father knew him, and my father would have been in jail for at least GBH, if not murder. So I had to walk the streets after that incident for 2 or 3 hours to calm myself down.
Yeah.
Again, I kept silent because I knew my father would have ended up doing life, probably. So I kept silent. And I struggled through that summer with another layer on top. And then things happened. Another scene happened. Yeah. A good scene happened.
We often tell friends this story, you know, and so the reaction is like your reaction, and like people who are watching, it's like, what? You know? So you've got this image of a 15-year-old girl who's now kind of anti-God and going down this route and taking everything on and all of that kind of thing. And so we often tell the story, but it's normally to people who've never heard anything about Christianity type of thing. And so then the story kind of continues, and it gets better. You'll be pleased to know it gets lighter. Gets
well, this
lighter.
is real life, isn't it?
It is.
It's so interesting. Sorry, sir. It's so interesting that, like, so many of the stories of pre-Jesus are that I just didn't believe. I just didn't believe there was anything there. And then he revealed himself to me. But your story is very different here between the two of you. But, like, your story is, I did believe, but I went the other way. And that's so interesting to think, like, you did believe that God was there. You were just angry and went the other. And I found that so... That's what I'm like about.
So I didn't have to have Christianity proved to me. I didn't have to have the spiritual side of Christianity proved to me because I knew it existed on the other side.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You see, so I didn't have to have a proof. But the one thing, bizarrely, when I did become a Christian, 6 months into it, I got filled with the Holy Spirit. But I asked God not to give me the gift of prophecy because I couldn't trust myself with it.
Oh, wow,
Because of having done tarot cards and having done palm reading, I did not trust myself with it. Please do not give me the gift of prophecy because I don't trust myself. 20 years later, I said to God, I think I'm ready.
Wow.
Because I think I know.
20 years later?
20 years later.
Sorry, Gail, for those watching, could you just share what the gift of prophecy is?
The gift of prophecy is that God, by His Holy Spirit, if you're praying for somebody in particular, or you're in an atmosphere of God, God will reveal something to you about that person,
Yeah.
about the situation that they're in, or a situation that is going to happen, and then you tell them. Usually it's good to have another person with you
Yeah.
as a witness,
Yeah.
but it is so close to what Satanists would practice.
Sure. Yeah.
There is always parallels, and it's so strange.
Yeah.
But I have been on both sides of the fence, and I know which is stronger, which is God
Yeah.
by far,
Yeah.
and I know which is more peaceful,
Yeah.
and that is God by
Yeah.
far.
That's great.
The occult and all these other things may seem very alluring, but God is far more.
Yeah.
Far more and far stronger and far greater and far more on the ball.
Yeah.
And don't
Yeah.
you think that the prophetic word, really, coming from somebody who moves in the gifts of the Spirit, is always building people up.
Oh, yes.
It's always exhorting.
Yes.
It's always positive.
Yeah.
And so it's something that really is encouraging for
Yes,
individuals.
it is.
And sometimes for a church,
Yes.
it's encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know. So it's always positive, always encouraging,
That's great.
Yes.
always helping people, really,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
That's
That's
great.
good.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Also want to say, Gail, thank you for being vulnerable with us, because that's difficult, and this is the real life show,
Yes.
and you know, not there's trials and there's joys, aren't there? So we just want to thank
Yeah.
you for
But
sharing
the reason
with
why
us.
I do, and I don't find it difficult, is because I kept silent for 25 years.
Yeah.
I married Paul without him knowing.
Wow.
He knew not a thing, because I had learnt to keep silent.
Yeah.
And the only reason it came out was because we'd had 2 children. We'd had our second child. He was 6 months old, and we were at home watching what was the equivalent of Top Gear, something like that, where people were being interviewed with a model of a new car. Who should be interviewed but the perpetrator of my childhood trauma
Oh gosh.
on my television,
Yeah.
in my home, coming back to me 20 years later.
Wow.
And I can remember shock. I went into the bathroom and I just threw up.
Yeah.
Paul came and asked if I was okay. And I knew at that moment I had to tell him.
Yeah.
So I came into the lounge, sat down, and I told him about the child trauma.
Yeah.
And bless him, he wept. But he wept for me, and for me having carried it for 20 years.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell him about the teenage trauma.
Yeah.
That came later when I was 40.
Wow.
Because I knew, and I was the pastor here, nobody knew. I knew that this hadn't ruined my life because I am a strong character, but it had marred it.
Okay. Yeah.
And to a certain extent, he had won. And I am very competitive in all senses. So I thought, right, you're not winning the other half of my life.
Yeah.
So I decided to come out in the sense of telling Paul.
Yeah.
And again, bless him, he wept. Because although I was saying no, I still blamed myself.
Yeah.
It took me decades to realise that I wasn't to blame.
No.
So I told him, and we talked it through. My father was still alive. My mother had died. My father was still alive, and I felt as though I'd got to tell my 76-year-old father about it. And he wept because he couldn't understand why I couldn't trust him.
Yeah.
But when I began to explain, he just said, well, whatever you want to do, Gail, I will follow you, I will support you. For me, I chose, rightly or wrongly, other people need to, but for me, I chose not to go to the police.
Yeah.
I had no evidence. So, and I didn't want it brought up unless I was in control of how
Yeah.
it came out.
Yeah.
So we did have a midweek adults only meeting here in this building, and I told my story.
Wow.
I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. And there were at least 20 people who came to me within 3 months who said they'd had a similar experience.
Yeah.
So what I felt my role in this is to expose the darkness. But what happened, the Lord took me through a healing process. I didn't go to a counsellor. Excuse me. I didn't go to a counsellor because I think it was because of the way I got saved that I've mentioned before. Dramatic.
Yeah.
Dramatic salvation. Everything for me has been dramatic. I don't do things easy. It's dramatic. I knew that I needed for the Lord to take me through and on a journey of healing. And I trusted him. For me, that was my route. Not everybody. There are so many people that do need to go to professional counsellors.
Yeah.
But for me, I wanted to say to God, you saved me. You've taken me through so much. You can do this.
That's great.
And you can give me the life that I should be living.
Yeah.
So it took about 18 months to 2 years to travel on this journey. And I had all sorts of emotions. I had, which Paul still can't believe to this day, about 48 hours of silence where I couldn't speak.
Paul.
There were days where I couldn't eat.
Heaven comes early. Heaven comes early.
Wow.
And there were days where I'd go out onto the common and release the scream that I should have released at 8
Yeah.
when I was 8.
Yeah.
And to be fair, also, people did minister to you, didn't they?
Yes,
I can
I had
understand
people praying over me and I was talking it through with people.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that has happened that I can see has changed. And this probably will explain to a lot of people why I am so open as I am with my preaching, with my talking, with my storytelling, is because I was taught how to be silent.
Yeah.
And the Lord taught me a release.
Oh, that's so good, Gail.
So once I was in darkness
Yeah.
and silence dominated, I came in to the area of knowing Jesus and marriage and happiness, very happily married. But there was still the silent secret. Nothing is secret about me now, Sarah. Everybody knows everything about my life.
Especially now.
Yeah. And it's kind of like that for me was the healing side. So it
Amazing.
explains a lot why my texts are long,
Yeah.
my communication is long,
Yeah.
because that is my healing.
Yeah.
Is revelation
That's beautiful.
of who I am.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I just ask you, sorry, just go into when you had the meeting here,
Yes.
was that to help the church understand what you were going through, or was your intention to lead people in that? Like, did you feel God say to you, there are other people in this church that this has happened to, I need you to lead this even though you're healing yourself? Or was it a bit of both?
No, it was more the latter.
Yeah.
That someone had given me a word of prophecy, how we explained before,
Yeah.
that my life would be like a scalpel, a surgeon's scalpel, that would expose, would cut open and expose. But there would be others that would come to do the healing.
Okay.
So my ministry in this arena was like a scalpel. And I thought, I've got to step out. And the first place I need to step out after my family is my home church.
Wow.
And
that's
it
really
did
powerful.
reveal. And it has, over the years, over the decades since, things have been revealed,
Yeah.
popped
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great, Gail.
What? So then, coming back to the story, then bringing us back after a lovely, a long tangent. Bring us to the point where you then decide this, or what happens to bring the change. So you're about to tell us about like
Yeah.
a good scene. You're about to
Okay.
tell us
Oh,
about.
yeah.
So I'll
So,
tell you this tale.
cool.
So
My white knight.
I'm known as the White Knight in this, who comes in. So you got this picture of a 15-year-old girl who's kind of not in the grip of grace, but actually in the grip of hell, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, if you're being honest about it.
Yeah.
So if you could take you back, retrace our steps. I'm 16. I've gone into the lower sixth at school, and Gail is in the fifth form.
So, putting it in today's world, it's year 11 and year 12.
Oh, sorry, yeah. You have to keep up with the times.
That's very well done. That's very well done, Gail. I wouldn't have known that.
So at our school, which was called the Sir Gilbert Clawton, it's derelict now, and it sounds posh, but it wasn't. It was rubbish, really.
It wasn't. It was a lovely school.
It was a grammar school. I'll have
does
you know.
sound
It was
posh.
a grammar school, and but it was great, really. So it was a mixed school, and there was a balcony where, when you were cool and you were in the sixth form or the fifth form, you were allowed to stand around the balcony.
Health and safety didn't exist.
Yeah, yeah.
The balcony came up to your waist.
Yeah,
So
it
the
was
breeze was
scary.
top
It was scary. But across the balcony, I spot this very glorious looking, very attractive,
Oh, I love
Glorious
that.
looking.
Glorious
Glorious.
looking.
Wow.
very
Love
I
attractive,
hadn't got a halo at that point, Paul.
ultra attractive, dark-haired girl talking to my mate, and it's like, I think I need an introduction. So we start chatting and several other things, and the relationship starts to build. And I didn't know anything about Gail. All I knew about Gail was she was really good looking. So we chatted away, and for several weeks, you know, we were kind of having a great time, really, just talking to one another. And eventually I thought, I ought to ask her out, you know, I ought to ask her out. But I'd had this kind of drilled into me from church. Number one, Paul, whatever you do, don't go out with a non-Christian, you know. And it's like, oh, right, yeah, but she's really good looking. so I'm struggling with this. So I decide to take Gail to our youth meeting, so that will salve my conscience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our first date is me taking Gail to church.
Oh,
Now, with this
wow.
story, right, so
That's
I'm
big.
oblivious to everything that's
Yeah.
going on. I'm totally oblivious to it. And so I'm chatting to Gail, and I'm like, yeah, would you like to come out to our church youth group, you know? So church is mentioned right
Yeah.
up front. Right
Right from the start.
And so in one sense, there ought to have been a rejection here,
Yeah.
but there wasn't.
Because everything that you had been through,
Got it. Yep.
and then you meet someone and they say, do you want to come to church?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my goodness me.
By
Yes.
which time I was known in the school because we got quite a vibrant Christian union starting to get going. And there was quite a number that came to it at that time. So it was a bit known. So Gail's in this dilemma of a Christian wanting to take her to church.
Oh.
And tell us the tale, Gail. Tell the
So,
tale.
I mean, there was something about Paul that I trusted that I had never experienced in previous boyfriends. because I had boyfriends, but my answer was always no. When, you know, things started to develop, it was no. So the relationship ended. So it was kind of like, no. But I just felt something, and I now know it was the fact of him being a Christian and loving Jesus.
Yeah.
And it was that I was feeling, but I didn't register it at the time. When he asked me to come out, I thought, yes, to church. No.
Oh gosh.
So, but I didn't say no. I said yes, because I really wanted to go out with him and spend
Well,
time
you would,
with him.
wouldn't you?
You
Really?
would.
You would.
Oh, he was pretty.
Oh,
He was a pretty boy.
Pretty.
Very lovely,
He
always.
got
Handsome.
He got
Long blonde
long
hair.
blonde curly hair. honestly,
It's hard
he
to
had.
believe.
I've
I'm
seen the
not lying.
photos of you two. Goodness me.
So I went, but I honestly thought God would strike me dead when I walked through the doors of a church again. But I was very rebellious. So it was in 1969,
Yeah.
and we're actually celebrating next week 55 years of that date.
12th of December.
12th of December, next week,
Yeah.
55 years of that date.
Wow.
So it was 69, it was the hippie era, so it was the long coats, and I had to go on the bus. So I met him on the bus, I met him off the bus, and what he didn't realise was that underneath my coat was the rebellious side of me. To go to church, I got a pink hot pants suit on. Hot pants, for those who don't know, are very short shorts with knee-high pink suede boots matching.
Oh, sweet.
So I was fine walking to the church, got into the church, and I took the coat off. He nearly died.
Paul, was your dad at this meeting?
Thankfully, he wasn't there.
Okay,
But
yeah.
Pastor John Price was.
Oh, was
he was
he?
He
leading
was the
it.
youth leader.
He was the youth
He was the
leader.
youth leader. So John kind of like, he'd be early 20s then, I think. And he's kind of like, can't believe what he sees, but he's been... So I'd take Gail and sit her by my best pal.
Yeah.
So we sat on the back row, and this is a youth meeting, all right. Be about 50, 60 in at the time at this youth meeting, and it was like a hot youth meeting. This is like not just we going for it, like really, and it got. So I sit Gail by my pal, and just to completely put her off, he decides and to go very prophetic and actually spoke in tongues. And Gally sat by him. All right, so she's first time back in church after all this trauma, and you've got a guy of appearing to go loopy.
It was black and white against each other, you see.
It was, really.
And he was very sensitive, my
In the
pal.
context, sorry, just to help my brain. So the July of that year,
Yes.
all this was going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
The December of the
Yes.
same year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yes.
It's mega
Yes.
Whoa.
total darkness to light, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man.
But my reaction to Paul's friend, I mean, I don't know why God didn't strike me dead. I just laughed.
Did you?
Yeah.
I just
Wow.
laughed.
So even though you'd accepted God.
No, I
and-
hadn't at that point.
Oh, you hadn't?
No, I hadn't at that point.
So was it the summer
was-
after where you had the one-to-one conversation?
No, it was
January,
just
wasn't it?
January, in the January.
Oh, so it was,
After
it was
the
quick
December.
then. It
Oh,
was quick.
right, yeah.
It was in
Okay.
January.
Wow.
January the 25th. I'm very good on dates.
Yeah,
I'm very
you
good on
are.
facts. Same date as the Church of England celebrate the conversion of St. Paul.
If I remember it.
Yeah. So my conversion was similar to St. Paul's, where the scales dropped from his eyes.
Yeah.
And it was on
Wow.
the same day that the traditional CV church
Yeah.
celebrated.
Wow, goodness me.
That's-
So
You're a little
fast
bit
forward.
shocked, Josh.
Yeah.
Just,
This is fantastic.
I'm the kind of like I remember I don't remember dates, but I remember like moments of the year. So like So if I was you, every December,
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, this is when this happened. And then
Yeah.
between then and the January the 25th, I'd be like, whoa, remember when this
Yeah.
was happening in this
Yeah.
time? So, like, sorry, sir, did you have a question?
I've forgotten it.
Sorry.
I was going to say fast
after the
forward.
date, after that episode in the youth, he took me to the Wimpy bar. He
Did.
splashed out and bought me a
Yeah.
burger and chips.
Is that
Oh,
good, the
was
Wimpy?
Was that good?
There's
the
only one
Wimpy?
Wimpy I think exists, and it's in Swanage.
There
It's
you
like
go.
a
It's the equivalent to
Yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like
old
high-end.
one Porsche.
No,
Well, he was only
it wasn't
16. He'd
high.
only got his pocket money.
Aw.
But I think the whole thing is, and this is part of my privileged background, I think my parents were praying for me.
Yeah.
So my mum in particular was praying for me every week, every day, probably. It just shows the power of prayer.
Yeah.
So I'm totally, all the way through, I'm still all oblivious to what's going on.
Yeah.
He didn't know.
But-
He didn't know about the occult.
But you know, the Lord has got a master plan.
Yeah.
And you can see how over the years, how he kind of grows and develops. But I think part of this, you have to point back to the prayer of a praying parent.
Oh, yeah.
And that's such a big
Powerful.
deal.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I got into scrapes and loads of other stuff, but always came out good.
Yeah.
But I always put it down to the fact that my mum was praying for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
you know. And that's an incredible lesson, really.
Yeah.
So even her prayers, I think, were overshadowing the whole deal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, at the time. But, so, yeah, we started courting, didn't we?
Yeah, I have to say that the day after I had my if prayer with God,
Yeah.
and I asked him to come on board in my life, I got rid of everything I possessed to do with the occult.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't burn it because my parents had wondered what I was burning,
Yeah.
but I dumped it.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything, including all the Dennis Weekly books that I just had got. Everything went.
Yeah.
And that was my
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah,
It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
It's done.
This,
And I think that was known in the heavenlies as well.
Yeah.
this
good and
was a
bad for it.
breaking point, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because also in the school then,
Yes.
if you can imagine, Gail becomes a Christian, so she's got 2 years left at school, 2.5 years left at school, and the Christian Union was beginning to grow, and a lot of people were starting to give their hearts to the Lord, you know, saying yes to Jesus in the school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this was part of it, I think, because by the time Gail had finished, the sixth form, what was known as the upper sixth at the time, of a group of 30, 35, there was only about 3 who hadn't become Christians. So
Wow.
it preceded almost like a mega revival,
Yeah.
where you'd got 2 main teachers, about 5 pupils who'd started this Christian Union about 4 years before. By the time this season was through, you'd got about 70 turning up at Christian Union at school, and
Yeah.
and kids knowing Jesus at school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and
Yeah.
it was it kick-started something. It was part of a whole
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
going
Yeah,
on
yeah.
at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I paid a small price
Oh yeah.
for this. So there were a lot of staff in the school that didn't like the Christian influence. They were opposed to it. And I had been selected to be the head girl in my final year. But I was hauled into a meeting with members of staff who said to me, if you continue to go out with Paul Chamberlain, you will not become head girl
Oh, wow.
because we do not like the influence that he has upon you.
Whoa.
So I never became head girl.
Wow, what was that?
Yeah, it wouldn't happen today. It wouldn't be allowed to happen
No.
today. But so many things, yeah.
And was
So-
that because of your influence with the
Christian,
CU?
it was the whole Christian ethos was kind of like opposed by a lot of teachers, really.
Really?
And there were about 3 or 4 teachers who were Christian, but then there was this kind of group that hated it.
Because there
just
was
hated
still
it
the
completely.
satanic
Yeah.
stuff that was going on in
Yeah.
that school.
Oh, there was stuff going on. I found out later that I'd got curses going on at me, going against me, and all of this kind of stuff. And so I'll laugh about it now. But at the time, I don't think I was really bothered. You know, I
Yeah.
just trusted the Lord, and His case of
Yeah.
Yeah.
roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this would be a really good place
Yep.
to do our pause.
Yeah.
But what I wanted just to do to end the episode, obviously, really heavy topic, and I think it'd be brilliant if in the description below there'll be links to where you can find support.
Yeah.
And if
Exactly.
anything is coming up from this, like the support below.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, obviously, we believe that the best support is Jesus. And the greatest thing here is that this is a testimony of the truth of that.
Yeah.
And I have so many people in my life who aren't Christian, who say the line, and you'll know when I say it, if I walked into church, I'd burst into flames.
Yes.
How many people say that to us? And I almost sometimes go like, sometimes I don't have the words to say other than that won't happen. Please come in. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity, Gail, just to finish off the episode before we do our tradition, and we'll go to the next episode. But why is it important for those people who have that on them to come into this place, whether it's this building or another church? Doesn't matter what church is it, but from your experience of not bursting into flames, why is it so important that they choose church? That the faith is so important for them to step into.
Yeah, it's
I
great.
totally understand, because I was there. That I thought I'd be struck dead. But I saw God. I didn't really appreciate who God was and His attributes. And His attributes are of a gracious, loving Father who loves every human being on this planet, regardless of how they respond to Him. It is called unconditional love. He loves you regardless of whether you love Him or hate Him. And you would not be struck dead. You would find the truth.
Yeah.
You would find the truth. And that's what I longed for more than anything, was the truth. And you'll find the truth in a place of worship called church, or a Christian who is a true Christian and loves Jesus. That's where you'll find the truth. And you won't be struck dead. God's got His arms open wide, waiting for you to run into them.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, guys.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 1.
Yep.
We'll be back next month with part 2. We're gonna step into the next post school and into Calvary and some of the testimonies that we've got to unpack with you, which I can't wait for.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So we're back then, but we want to do
Tradition.
as we do every episode. So we're going to do it twice. Yes. But we're going to take a selfie.
Yay!
So, I don't know. How are you going to do this? Are you going to go around? Yeah. Every time.
That's good. That was good.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move as well.
On your knees next to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Lovely.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us for our December episode. We hope you have the great Christmas. You can join us at loads of different things at Arise this year. But we thank you for listening to the Real Life Show as well. We're available here on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can watch us on Spotify as well. And you can listen to us on Amazon Music. And what's the other one? Apple Music.
Apple Music. Well done, Josh. Well done, Josh.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
You
There's
don't
so many.
get the recognition
Thank
you deserve
you.
for doing
Apple
all
Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. I think I've got them all. But
them
thank
all.
you for joining us, and we'll see you next
that.
month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.